Good afternoon. Welcome to our session. I'm Anna Carugati, the Group Editorial Director of WorldScreen. I'm delighted to be here today because we have two seasoned, experienced veterans of the long-running scripted genre. And given the fact that drama is very popular around the world these days, there's a lot to talk about. So I thought, first of all, since you know your careers better than I do, if you could start by briefly explaining to the audience sort of what you're known for, what the most important works you've...
My name's Tom Fontana, and my long-running series have been St. Elsewhere, back before any of you were born, Homicide: Life on the Street, Oz, Copper, which wasn't long-lived, but 2 seasons, and currently Borgia. I've had a great time all these years, and I intend to have a few more.
Hi, my name's Chris Long, and I just noticed, by the way, we fold our arms the same way in the pictures. Must be a sort of a showrunner thing. And having heard Tom speak this morning, I want to be Tom when I grow up. He's very articulate, and I'm such a huge fan. I'm a bit nervous just being around him, to be honest. Anyway, I've done a bunch of series in the US, both as a director and a producer. I guess going back to Lois and Clark. I guess Gilmore Girls was quite a big hit. I've directed numerous episodes, Weeds, Without a Trace, and I think for the last 15 years I've been a producer-director on shows, working hand in hand with gentlemen like Tom. As the creators, and at the moment I'm on The Mentalist, which is going into we just wrapped season 6 actually on Thursday night, and season 7 remains to be seen.
All right. Well, so long-running series is something you're both intimately acquainted with. What would you say on the series that you've worked on? What have been the biggest challenges you encountered in keeping them fresh season after season?
Well, that's an interesting question in the sense of because I try never to repeat myself, not that I've actually been asked to repeat myself, but, like Dick Wolf is a very dear friend of mine, and he's like, I used to say I wanted to do Law and Order Lost and Found, because that's what he would eventually get to. Whereas we finished Homicide, and I loved doing Homicide, but I didn't want to do another cop show. And when we finished Oz, I sort of had run out of ways to kill people, so that's why I stopped. HBO wanted the show to keep going, but I realized that it was sort of running its course. I think the toughest thing is if you establish really good characters, they will continue to feed you their lives. And if you have wonderful actors playing really interesting characters, then you just have to listen and sort of, I had an actor say to me once that I must have been listening at the window of his house because I had written a scene between he and his wife that was exactly the argument that he and his real wife had the night before. And I think that's the element is if you can listen to the actors, the rhythm of the actors, that starts to feed you.
Chris?
Yeah, I would definitely support that. I mean, for us, I know what's kept us on the air for 6 years, and that would be Simon Baker. Without a shadow of a doubt, he owns that character. He has the absolute voice of that character. Obviously, I like to think that Bruno Heller and I have contributed something as well. But definitely, he is the heart and soul of The Mentalist. Now, keeping that on for 6 years, that's the tricky part. I think a lot of time in American television, when you don't know if you're getting picked up or not, you can tend to peak too early in a series, and thereby causing some sort of lull in episode 2 or 3, or out of the gate we were a hit out of the gate, a hit worldwide. So we knew. So for us, it was a lot easier. Although with shows like I was talking to the creators of Chuck the other day, and they never knew. They got 8 episodes and 12 episodes, and they ended up going like 5 or 6 seasons. But to know that you have an order on the air for so long, and to keep those characters fresh, it's that's what keeps going.
I've heard from one creator told me that in his experience, season 3 and 4 tend to be the ones where he creatively found the most challenges or roadblocks. Has that been your experience, or is each series different?
For me, each series has been different. I would say, again, when Andre Braugher left Homicide at the end of season 5, there was a seismic change in the rhythm of the show because he had over time become the lead in an ensemble series. And it took us probably half a season to kind of get our bearings back. But in terms of stories, I've never really had a problem of like, oh, what are we going to do next? I mean, it's easier when you're dealing with like a show about homicide because there's a homicide in the paper every single day, unfortunately.
Yeah, for us, I think we hit our creative stride around season 3, actually. Season 3 and into season 4. We were at that point still full into our nemesis, our Red John story arc, or that storyline. And that was going full bore. And so for us, we sort of hit our stride. I think we hiccuped to be honest, in the first season where the show, I think, swung from, in its darkest moments, sort of Criminal Minds, and its lightest moments, leaning into Monk and Psych. And one week we'd be like this way, and the next week we'd be trying to pull it back this way. So for us, even though we were lucky enough to survive season 1 and come out of the gate, like I said, a big hit, that was toughest for us. And then also this season in wrapping up the Red John arc and trying to reinvent the show, reinvigor the show, that was tough. But season 3 and 4, no, they were. I don't want to say they were on autopilot because they weren't. You're making 24 episodes a year. There's no autopilot. But we didn't hit a lull in.
You mentioned 23, 22, 24 episodes in a season. There is a trend now for shorter runs, 13, 15.
Thank God.
Yes, exactly. How is that better on the creative side? I think it changes the business model for the distributors. That's a different discussion. But how liberating is it to know that you go into a season and have to write fewer?
For me, it all depends on the concept. Now, because of this limited series idea, we can do different kinds of storytelling, as opposed to if there's 24, it has to have a certain kind of generator, the drama, the hour. But now you can say, okay, we're going to do 12 a season. And you also start to attract a different kind of talent because people are willing to make a shorter commitment that, the cable model that has now become part of broadcast television in America. So it's good. We're able to tell stories we've never told before and get people who normally wouldn't be willing to commit to it.
There's a lot of that, isn't it? A lot of feature film talent is now coming into television, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. I think that, doing 24 a season is brutal. I mean, really brutal on the actors, on us writers, directors. It's a big ask. It really is. Bruno came from Rome, and I came from a show called Dirt, which was on FX, which ran a couple of seasons. We both really wanted to try and make a big smash network hit. And when we got there, it was the juggernaut that kept coming, and understanding how to make 24 episodes. I mean, you're always going to make some that you're not happy with. I mean, sometimes it's just a question of getting the things on the air. Don't you agree? I mean, when you're trying to do it that way, it can be brutal.
When you're doing shorter runs, do you ever have the leisure of writing more than one episode at a time, or you between the time that the concept is picked up and the time you go into production, do you have more than one under your belt already? Do you shoot differently than you do when it's 24 episodes? Which my understanding is in the States, you shoot one episode per week or per 10 days.
I'll give you two different examples. In terms of the writing with Oz, because we were doing 80 year, the 1 year we did 16, what I would do is I would sit and I would write one character's story for the whole 8 episodes, and just write all those scenes. And then I'd sit and write the next characters, and then the next characters. And then as we were getting to do each episode, I would sort of fold the stories in together. Now, it was a different kind of show in that it was a little sort of anthology series. It was an anthology series in the sense that there each week there would be a part of one guy's story, but you wouldn't cut back and forth around to different things. But what oddly enough, what would happen sometimes is I would be folding, let's say, episode 6 together, and I'd take a scene from this guy's story and a scene from this guy's story, and I'd go, oh, he's dead. So that there was a certain amount of adjustments that had to be made. The thing with Borgia has been that we've been shooting in blocks of 3 episodes. And what was truly insane was because we were shooting in 4 different countries, and we had scenes for different episodes in 4 different countries, we were shooting 7 episodes simultaneously, which was fine for me because we got the writing pretty much done. It was terrible for the actors because they would literally be shooting a scene for episode 14, and then the next scene they would be shooting would be for episode 7. So they had to constantly be aware of where they were emotionally in the course of the season in order to do that. But it was the most efficient way to be able to shoot in these different locations because we were running out of Renaissance palaces in places we'd already shot.
There's one more season of Borgia to come?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, and that's because history will stop the storytelling?
History stops the story. Unfortunately, the characters die. And I'm not...
Borgia's
I'm not,
the afterlife.
Yeah, Borgia the afterlife.
I heard that they did True Detective, and they shot all 13 episodes together. Did you hear that?
You mean one director, one...
Yeah, one director, and they shot the whole thing. I don't know if anybody can confirm that or deny that, but I heard they did that, which is an amazing feat. I can only imagine how long that script was and how long that narrative was.
Well, when you take enough drugs...
We'll get to the role of director in a minute, but first, another thing that we're seeing in the U.S. is more serialized dramas as opposed to procedurals, which is an odd word, but basically it's an episode that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, while serialized, the plot continues from one to another. Do you have a preference one way or another? I mean, CBS, by definition, I think you have to produce procedurals, but creatively,
Well, the actual thing that's happened is that those shows do the kind of plot story has a beginning, middle, end per episode, but the character arc goes over time. You know what I mean? So that in a way you can have the best of both worlds. I think that the I love writing both, so it would be impossible for me to say, oh, I like this one over that one. I think that, as with anything, if there's too many procedurals, then it gets very hard to write them because everybody's seen everything, and you have to constantly figure out how to surprise them. And if you write too many serialized shows, if there's too many on the air, then the audience gets exhausted going, geez, I really can't, commit to another series. Right. I mean, I've been in Europe shooting for basically the last 3.5, 4 years. I am so behind watching television. It's extraordinary. I'm like literally sitting there in my house watching DVDs, just trying to, people are like, oh, season 3 of House of Cards. I'm like, duh, don't talk about it. I haven't even seen season 1 yet. So it's hard.
What are you watching, by the way? What are you watching, by the way?
Well, I did watch season 1 of House of Cards, and now I'm going to start when I get home. I'm either going to watch, I actually would like your opinion, The Americans or Homeland?
Both.
No,
both.
I'll watch both. The question is...
Let's do it. Hands up for Americans and hands up for Homeland. Okay.
Oh, geez. All right.
I happen to really like both, but I binged, as they say. I binged watched Homeland. Yeah. I couldn't get enough. It was absolutely riveted to it. Yeah.
Well, I probably am going to watch that one too, only because I know the man who created it in Israel, and I saw an episode or 2 of that, so I'm curious to see how it compares. But also, Henry Brummel was a great friend of mine, and so he put his heart and soul into it.
I know Henry too. We bought his house in Santa Monica.
Did you? Yeah.
Nice man.
I'm so glad I'm here. No, honestly. There's so much television on and so much really great television. Does that influence you? You're in the middle of a season and something comes up.
The reason I don't watch anything while I'm really intently working on a show is for that very reason. When we were doing Homicide, there was, besides Law and Order, there was
NYPD Blue?
NYPD. Thank you. NYPD Blue. I knew there was a blue in there. I just couldn't figure out what it came after. And I remember one week I'd seen an episode, and about a month later I was writing a scene for a Homicide, and I went, oh my God, what a good scene. And then I stopped and went, of course it's a good scene. David Milch wrote this. I had plagiarized in my writer brain, and so I basically stopped watching anything when I'm working, and that's why I have to do these binge things where I'm catching up.
I'm the same way. I don't watch anything, only because really there's no time. It's our shooting schedule is 9 months of the year. We work 12, 13, 14 hours a day, 9 months of the year in production. Then there's post-production and pre-production. So the gig is about 11 to 11 and a half months a year. And to be honest, I don't know. I don't watch anything. It's very hard unless it's something that's very disconnected. And I mean disconnected from what I'm doing, like Homeland or the Borgias actually, or something that's very, very different to the Mentalist, because you see a lot of the same actors and a lot of this, and so you're always like, yeah, I used him in so-and-so, or he'd be great in so-and-so. So it's hard for me to disconnect from it. So I don't actually end up watching any of it during the season.
My understanding always was that historically, feature films was a director's medium and television was the writer's or producer's medium. With production values having increased so much in television in recent years, how has the role of the director changed, and what kind of relationship do you have with someone like Tom when you're working on a series?
Yeah, I mean, I have made my living working hand in hand with people like Tom as a director attached to shows, as the producer director, executive producer director, whatever you want to call it, over the number of years with many creators. So the overall vision of a show when you're doing 22 or 24 episodes, I find doing this job as a director and a producer sort of gives me more authorship, like a feature film. And I don't see my job to be an obstacle or get in the way of the directors that come and work on our show, because I really want strong directors with an opinion. The show needs to have an opinion. Our actors want to be directed, but I'm in charge of the overall vision and the look of it. Having said that, I think that the director's role in television has gotten much, much bigger, and because of the amount of series that are out there and the amount of high-profile series that are out there. Also, the diminishing of the small films. I mean, I had Alison Anders direct on my show. John Dahl was due to direct one of my series. I mean, these are guys that are in the business, guys and girls that are in the business, that are now in television because the $3 to $5 to $12 million feature market has basically gone away. And so you're getting a high-end quality of director coming into television, doing network television, doing cable television. It's I hate the cliche, it's the golden age of television, but it's a cliche for a reason. It's the golden age of television. It's like everybody wants to work in television.
Tom, do you find yourself working with different directors on the different episodes of, for example, Borgia?
Well, with Borgia, I had to hire directors who I'd never worked with before. I mean, my tendency is to always, when you're doing one episode a week, let's say with Homicide, I'd usually hire somebody I knew, somebody sort of with a great reputation, and then somebody from NYU or some young filmmaker, and sort of mix it up. And what it does is it keeps the actors on their toes, because the different levels of experience. With Borgia, I was shooting in Europe, and I didn't know any European directors, so I sort of had to pick on faith the men and women that I worked with. The work I saw of theirs I thought was tremendous, which is why I hired them, and we ended up having with each of them, I ended up having an incredibly close relationship with that, because especially when you're shooting 7 episodes at the same time with 3 different directors, you are like in the middle of a war, and you get that kind of, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. So, yeah, I just love working with them.
Was the choice on Borgia's, they had to be European and...
They had to be European,
Okay.
yeah.
Right.
Because of the co-production agreement, or because
Yes, they didn't want to hire DGA, U.S. DGA members because of the fringes and all the residuals and all that stuff. I forced them to hire Writers Guild East members because I'm very much a union man. So that was as far as I could push it. But it was really about maintaining the money, the balance of the money. Yeah.
Speaking of the money, even though you are on the creative side, both of you, give us some examples of a difference between working for a network show where the funding comes primarily from one source to working for a co-production where the funding is coming, you have more than one master to please, so to speak. What's your experience been?
Well, the surprising thing for me was after the first season of Borgia, the series was a pretty big hit in like 85 countries. And if that had been true in America, we would have been picked up instantly. But there were so many partners, and there was so much negotiation that had to go on between the European partners that it literally took forever for us to get the green light to start writing, let alone start shooting. So that was a real downside to the whole global, international model. But the rest of it, my agent Peter Benedict and UTA really guided us through that each moment along the way. So I didn't actually do anything when it came to the financing.
Okay.
Yeah, I too, on the Mentalist, it's funded by CBS. Warner Bros. Television, produces the show. CBS pay a license fee, so we're only dealing with one master. How did you deal with the notes sessions then? Because we deal with our process in network television is the studio gives a round of notes on scripts and cuts, on outlines, story outlines, scripts and cuts, and then we do those notes, or we appreciate those notes, and then we go to the network, and they then give us the notes.
That's a diplomatic way of saying it.
No,
You appreciate the notes.
All notes are good. I've never fought notes or resisted notes. I often will say what's the note behind the note to myself, not to them. They'll sometimes, and not just my creative execs at Warner Bros. Or CBS, but throughout my entire career, the notes can sometimes sound a little on the nose, or a little, can you make this lighter, or can you do this, or can you do that, or can you put a loop line in there? But I try to examine what the note behind the note is, what they're struggling with. I just want to know what their struggle is. And I would say almost every call that we get off, as soon as we get off of, I would say that we've learned something. If it's just one thing, we've learned something. But how do you deal with it?
It was actually relatively easy in the sense of that Atlantique deferred to Canal Plus, and Beta basically only gave us notes related to doing a cut that was acceptable standards-wise for ZDF. They rarely gave us. The reality is, and this is like one of those things you go, how is this possible? If I got 2 notes an episode, it was a big day, yeah. But then again, we all
on scripts or
scripts or cuts.
Oh, cuts.
Yeah, no, it was remarkable. I'm saying, I kept pinching myself, thinking this is going to go very badly all of a sudden.
And what's acceptable to American broadcasters and what's acceptable to European broadcasters?
It's the same kind of thing that's true in America. You can do a show for HBO and you can do a show for CBS, and this has nothing to do with quality. It just has to do with who they're trying to reach and what the expectation of their particular audience is. Canal Plus is more like HBO, and ZDF is more like CBS. Right. ZDF is more like CBS, but it wasn't like the cuts that I was being asked for. It wasn't like take out that scene where such and such happens. It was like, could we see one less moment of this event? You know what I mean? It was,
Right,
and
right.
it never really hurt the picture doing it for ZDF. What I did find ironic was when they put out the DVD, they put out the full production, and they call it the director's cut, which I just love. I just love that.
That's funny. The other thing about network television is we have to hit a time every week, whether it's 44 or 16.
Right,
I think ours is like 44 minutes and 16 seconds. Whereas you don't have to do that, do you?
You
got some
have
sort
more of a
latitude.
range. You can go like between, let's say, 48 minutes and 52 minutes.
Yeah, see, that's so much easier. We had that on FX when I was doing Dirt on FX. It's really hard to hit that time every week
Right.
because you've got some that you want to speed up, and there's some that you're just so in love with that the things that are getting lifted are moments and production value and stuff. To get it down to that time, that's a really hard thing to do, is hit that sort of, and it is like 44 minutes and 16 seconds or something like that.
Right. We see in the United States, have seen for a number of years, dark, complex characters, moral compasses that don't always point to true north. And Tom, I think you kind of started that a few years ago. Are those characters necessarily more interesting to write and to create stories around? If normal ever existed, are the days of a normal family on television gone?
The thing that's the truest about television, at least in terms of American television, is it's cyclical. So if something is a success, it gets repeated. There are 12 versions of it. And like I said before, people get tired of it. And they go, oh, I wish there was, now I could watch a show like this, and somebody hits it. And then they make 12 of those. So I don't think, I don't think anything goes away. Maybe celebrity bowling or something like that.
Or diving.
Yeah, but I think it is all cyclical. I think that the audience for cable is compared to the number of people who watch Mentalist in a week is infinitesimal, and as long as that cable network is happy with those numbers. You're feeding an audience that if every show on television was like that, I think no one would watch. The major number of people wouldn't watch television, because most people don't want to see the kinds of screwed up characters that are on cable.
Right.
I think it's cyclical, and I think it also depends on what's going on in the world and on what's going on in the economy. I know my Arlie character, Simon Baker's character, Patrick Jane, is very light. And we honestly attributed some of the massive success of the show to the fact that it came out right at the end of the Bush government, just before Obama came in, the financial crisis. It was like people were like losing their houses, the stock market was crashing. It was a dark time, so people didn't want to invite more dark characters into their house. And so, our show started, and there was Blondie skipping around over a dead body.
Right.
It's got its tongue in its cheek, and it's very light. It doesn't
Right.
take itself too seriously.
Right.
It's something you can either follow the bouncing ball, as in you can follow along with the crime, and we'll leave all the clues for you or you can just watch Simon Baker.
Right. To the extent that you can get into details, your experience, both of you, on network television, give us an example. What are the considerations that go into canceling a series?
Canceling.
Yeah.
Well, there's many really. I'll talk about my own show again. At the moment, like I said, we finished season 6. We are not picked up for season 7, although there are a number of shows picked up on CBS. We think that our worldwide audience is about 50 million viewers, which is huge. We're still doing good numbers on Sunday night at 10, which is the death slot of American television, partly because in American sports, they don't have, in European sports, we seem to have a time limit. It's like 90 minutes. Soccer is 90 minutes. In American sports, it doesn't seem to end, or it ends when it ends. So therefore, you can never really sure when your show is there, so it's clobbering our DVR.
Right.
So, I think that, excuse me, I think that there's, that's a consideration. A consideration is that there's so much vertical integration with CBS, owning shows. They own The Good Wife. They own other shows. They've got a lot of dramas which they've, picked up, including one of Tom's, right?
We're working on it.
Yeah, we're working on it. So I think it's a very important property to Warner Brothers. CBS basically in this business environment lease the show for 3 airings. The rest of the back end belongs to it does well foreign. Like I said, 50 million viewers everywhere. So those deals are being made with, between Les Moonves and Peter Roth right now. Whatever those deals are, whatever they encompass, reducing a license fee, taking this for this, blah blah blah. Whatever those deals are made, we're just pawns in that game. But it's a game that's played every single year.
Right.
I'd say the other 2 elements are that the longer a show goes, the more expensive it gets because all of the talent gets increases, and eventually it becomes just unless everybody's willing to take cuts in pay, which I don't know why people would do that, but then that becomes problematic, where the line between the profit and the cost becomes negligible for them. And the other thing, what happens sometimes, I'll give you the example of Homicide. We got canceled. We were doing well on Fridays at 10 o'clock because nobody watches television at Friday at 10 o'clock in America. It was this lost period of time that we managed to find an audience in. And somebody at NBC saw a British series, which I can't remember the name of, which was a light romantic comedy. And they decided, oh, this is really what it should be. It was like a romantic show. It wasn't a crime show or anything. It was just 20-somethings in love. And, oh, this is what we need. Let's get rid of that dark and brooding homicide show and put on this light and lovely little thing. And that lasted 6 episodes. But by that point, we were gone. So, I don't often smile when another show gets canceled, but I did on that
time
day.
You did.
Yeah.
You mentioned that hardly anyone here has seen St. Elsewhere. It was one of my, and I'm just saying it because I'm talking to. I love that show for many
thank
reasons.
you.
It was that and Hill Street Blues kind of started to change drama in the U.S. Yeah. If you go back to the production values in that show, and it could have had to do with the cameras, the technology, whatever you had available then. How much more complicated, how much more attention to lighting, production values, special effects are required today compared to back then?
I don't know. You'd actually be better to answer that than me.
I mean, it's enormous. The quality level that we're producing. I mean, I honestly believe the only difference now between, let's just say features and television is the editing, is the way that you often have to use close-ups where you wouldn't, just because it's being played on a smaller screen, or you think people's attention value might not. Or you people are stuck in here and in this audience now, and not many people have gotten up and walked out. Which happens in a movie. I could count on one hand how many movies I've walked out of in my entire life.
Right.
In television, it's everything's going on at the same time with the clicker, and it'll just be changed. So I think television is shot to an absolutely enormous standard. There's some incredibly talented people out there, and I feel it's only now in the editing is the difference. The production values are enormous.
Well, the only thing I would say about Hill Street and St. Elsewhere is that there was this sort of new shooting style, this kind of handheld thing that we did. And we had to build a set that you were able to literally go into a stairwell and go up a staircase. So the St. Elsewhere set was, at the time, I think, one of the largest and most expensive sets ever built for television, just simply to accommodate this crazy shooting style that had been developed. So it took a lot of time to get those shots right because, you want somebody to look sloppy. It really takes a lot of time.
Pilot or straight to series from a creative point of view, do you prefer one or the other?
Straight to series.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the pilot thing is, I mean, I don't know. I mean, look, everybody says that, how much longer can the pilot season in America continue in this way? It's a crazy sort of system. The one system I do like about it, it's sort of, a very sort of, you get kicked off the island, you get to, right away, you get to lay it all out there, you get to make your pilot. 2 weeks later, you're told whether you're in or you're out. That's the one good thing about it, is you're not left hanging on. But it's not particularly conducive to either getting talent. I mean, talent's the amount of money that talent wants as everyone's playing off against everybody else. Right. It's just not a very.
And there's a crazy run on talent
Yeah.
all at the same
Well,
time.
that's
right?
that's the thing.
I mean, that's the
The
thing.
only people who really enjoy pilot season are the agents, because they can pit one studio, one television show, one network against the other and get the best deals for their clients. But from a creative point of view, it's unbearable. It's hard enough to create a show and get it right without having to look over your shoulder or sometimes up the butt of the competition. So I can't wait for the day that the pilot season goes away.
Yeah, and Kevin Riley of Fox has said he's trying to change it this year. Gotham, Bruno Heller is doing Gotham, and that's going straight to series. I mean, long may it rain. A pilot season for me is such a madness.
But do you need to see the pilot to then tweak, or would you do that if you go straight to series? The first few episodes are kind of pilots anyway.
For example, there's a series that CBS ordered 13 episodes going in. It's a Vince Gilligan, David Shore pilot. Not pilot, series. But what they're shooting is they're shooting the first episode, and then they're shutting down for like a month or 6 weeks, tweaking, getting it edited, look at it, and then make whatever adjustments they want to make, which seems to me maybe the best way to do it.
Right.
That's what Gotham's doing. I mean, it's not straight to series. It's ordered, and then it has a penalty if it doesn't go. But they are shutting down and doing it. But it seems far saner to me.
We're running out of time, but are there projects either one of you haven't done yet that you would love to get to the screen?
Yeah, about 1,000 of them. I don't know. My biggest fear is that on my deathbed, I'm going to get the great series idea and be going, blah, 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 and they're going, what's he saying? What's he saying?
Would you pass it on if you got
Oh,
it?
totally. But
Chris?
Yes, I have a couple of things that I'm looking at. One in England at the moment, and also I'm actually at MIP because my documentary was here on Sunday. It did the closing screening on Sunday. It's called A Tale of Two Thieves, and it's something I'm very excited about. And so it's I'm also very excited to move more into not just dramas and scripted programming.
Would that interest you? A documentary or more
well,
fictional?
I've helped produce documentaries. I think it takes an extraordinarily and very different skill than I possess, because I always think I can improve the story. So my impulse would be to why don't we shoot one scene where he. But so yeah, I think I'm more dangerous if I would get more into documentaries. I think it's better that I stay in my.
It was a huge learning curve doing it, by the way.
I'm sure.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Is it your first foray into it?
Yes, first foray into it. And I made a lot of mistakes, and that's why I did it. I wanted to go there, do it. I made my mistakes. I'm very happy with the way it turned out.
Briefly, tell the audience what's it about. It's based on the Great Train Robbery?
Yes, it's called A Tale of Two Thieves. It's in 1963, there was this event in Britain called the Great Train Robbery, a heist. The guys got away with enormous amounts of money, about $65 million in today's money. Some were caught, some were never caught. It's a well-known event. There's been a lot of things made on it, documentaries and stuff. Our story is about two thieves, two people. The first one is Gordon Goody. Gordon Goody was one of the masterminds of it, along with more famous people like Bruce Reynolds, who have passed away. Gordon just remained stum his entire time. He got caught for it, served his time, when he lived in Spain and didn't really say anything about it anymore. He is getting old now. He wants to tell his story. Within that story, the last missing piece of this puzzle is the finding of the insider, who they only ever refer to as the Irishman or Ulsterman, who was the government insider at the post office. They never found him. They never could find him. There was a documentary out a year and a half ago called Missing Mastermind, and you sat through an entire hour and they didn't answer the question. I know, it's so weird. Anyway, Gordon told us his name. We had 2 teams of investigators working on it. We have found this gentleman, and our documentary reveals he is the second thief. Our documentary reveals this guy's life. Although the version we showed at MIP, I bleeped out everything. I bleeped out the names and the photographs and everything else because I wanted to save it for the broadcasters, obviously.
Tom, is this giving you ideas? I see you.
No, I'm just trying to figure out where the money went.
So are we.
All right. Well, I know you are both on a tight schedule, and you all have the opportunity to meet the speakers outside now, so I will turn you over to that. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.